Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Garibay's canon law. Okay? Now, here is Garibay's canon law. The broadest medium that a fiction world is presented to establishes its actual canon. Okay? Alright, so let me explain this. I've been thinking a lot about the canon of fictional worlds recently. And the reason why is there's incredible things happening in canon, in fictional world canon. The three big ones, right? Right now, the really big three big ones are Star Wars, Harry Potter, and Game of Thrones. Those are unique intellectual properties, fictional worlds, where what is happening with their canon is there are things happening in the canon of all of those that is absolutely unprecedented in the history of mankind. So our powerful, unique, fast-moving world in this modern age is really starting to push up against the idea of canon, okay? And so I've really been thinking about it a lot, and so let's start with Game of Thrones. So Game of Thrones, it has long been thought that the canon of Game of Thrones is the books. Well, that is clearly now wrong, and the reason why is the movies, the television show has surpassed the books and is now presenting viewers of Game of Thrones material with new content that was not created by its original author, okay? Now, it is my strong opinion that the viewers of Game of Thrones, not the readers, are the truest fans. And the reason why is they've seen the purest version of Game of Thrones. I read the 5 books to begin with, right? And it didn't matter much to me what they were putting on the shows. But now I'm behind, right? And people, that I meet who have tattoos from the fictional world of Game of Thrones often have never read any of the books, and they're just viewers of the show, right? But that's okay, and the reason why is the show has surpassed the books. It's accomplished what the showrunners and the show writers have accomplished what George R.R. Martin could not accomplish, right? With 6 years to write the last book, we don't even have a delivery date, right? So so basically, I think what's happened with Game of Thrones is the show has throttled the books and grasped from them the title of canon. And the show is really canon. The idea of presenting that the books are the canon of Game of Thrones now is ludicrous. It's I think any reader who would look at a viewer who's seen every episode up till now, and has been a faithful viewer, to tell them that the canon of Game of Thrones better than them is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's the first one, right? Now let's talk about Star Wars, okay? Star Wars is really fascinating. The first time that Star Wars had a canon issue, Star Wars has had canon issues that are unprecedented, truly unprecedented. The first canon issue with Star Wars was when Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, was re-released in the late 90s, right? And at that time, George Lucas said, hey, I want Han Solo to be an impish rogue, not a straight-up killer. And so he switched the canon, and he tried to make it so that Greedo shot first, and Han did not shoot first. That was a major, major strike to the canon of Star Wars done by the creator, okay? And that was the first time we in modern history, in my opinion, really dealt with an issue of what do we do when a creator is trying to change the canon of what we as viewers or readers or listeners believe is already established, right? And so that was just the first time that there was a major canon crisis within Star Wars. Now, the second time there was a major canon crisis within Star Wars was when Star Wars was sold to Disney. Disney created Star Wars Legends, and they took they backed up one of those dumpsters that you put on a semi and set it outside of the of the Star Wars property and began chucking massive amounts of Star Wars canon. They chucked thousands of Dark Knight comics. They chucked thousands of Marvel comics. They chucked hundreds of novels. They chucked dozens of video games. They chucked The Mandalorians. They chucked, ancient Star Wars history. Like, it was immense. There was, again, completely unprecedented. There has never been a more savage burning of a fiction world's canon than happened with what happened with Star Wars and Disney, okay? And so here again, you see this situation, and so you see this situation where canon is under assault, okay? Now, both of these properties so far, Game of Thrones and Star Wars, and at this point, there's so much question about what truly is canon. Disney has established canon for Star Wars with their words, okay? And they've said, here's canon. It's Clone Wars television series. It's all 6 of the films, and that's it. Like, that's, and then also everything that they've created since Disney purchased Star Wars is canon. Now, they said that with their words, but by changing canon previously, with their actions, they've declared we can change canon whenever we wish. Whenever we wish, right? And that's the reality, okay? All right, now, let's talk about Harry Potter. Harry Potter, in my opinion, is the absolute solid proof, in my opinion, that that Garibay's canon law is true, okay? Now, J.K. Rowling was fairly, she's interesting. I think she's done the most to keep control of canon, and so, a canon of Harry Potter. And I was tempted to think that Harry Potter had the cleanest canon of all 3 of those properties, but that's absolutely not true. Actually, Harry Potter is the strongest proof that Garibay's canon law is true. Now, let's go back and say what Garibay's canon law is one more time. The broadest medium that a fiction world is presented in establishes its actual canon, okay? Let's see what how Harry Potter proves that, okay? All right, so here's how that's proved. So Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling is very, very guarded with the canon of her books, right? And one of the things she's done to do that is she does not let any other writers touch her work, okay? And so so with Star Wars, George Lucas wrote the Star Wars, films and, wrote those stories. But he used collaborators even in the films when he was creating them. And then he let hundreds of writers jump in and tell short stories and tell comic book stories and tell video game stories and tell novel stories and, and tabletop role-playing game stories. Every type of story. He was like, hey, bring it on in. The water's fine. Jump on in, right? And so, there was a lot of issues with Star Wars canon because it was being created by many, many people, right? Now, yeah. All right, let me stay on target, right? All right, so J.K. Rowling's like, nah, we ain't having any of that nonsense. I have control of the Harry Potter world, and I'm going to determine what happens there, right? Now, she's let a few people in, but by and large, she's kept control of that world, okay? And, but because she chose to put out Harry Potter in a broader medium than the books, movies always reach a broader population. They are a broader medium, and so they reach a larger population than the books. That's true for that's definitely been true for Game of Thrones and for Harry Potter. The films and the televisions have reached far more people than ever read the source material, okay? So at that point, to determine what is canon for the Harry Potter world, okay, all you need to do is ask one simple question, right? What is the orientation of Dumbledore? Okay? Any serious Harry Potter fan knows the answer to that because J.K. Rowling answered that question when it was time in the films to do something out that was beyond the scope of the books with Dumbledore. And at that point, J.K. Rowling says, you can't make that choice in these films because I am establishing now the orientation of Dumbledore. There were really this was never mentioned in the books, okay? But right now, every serious Harry Potter fan will know the orientation of Dumbledore, okay? And to me, that's rock solid proof. So the films established new canon that was never presented in the books, right? So here you see Game of Thrones, the real canon is the television show. Harry Potter, the real canon is the films. And with Star Wars, they got it right. The canon was established to begin with as the films, and I am convinced the Star Wars films are all that matter for Star Wars canon. That's all that's ever mattered for Star Wars canon. They're the one thing that I don't think anyone will ever take away. And right now, those films are all 7 of all 8 of the existing films. So you have the prequels, the original trilogy, Rogue One, and The Force Awakens, and those are canon, and nothing else is. And one of the things that I think Garibay's canon law really, I think, brings forward that I think is an absolute truth today is what the creators want canon to be doesn't matter in the least. It does not matter in the least. What matters is the choice that the creators make on how broad of a medium they will allow their material to be presented in. And I think the reason why it's important to understand this is now that we understand it, creators can stop being surprised when they go into a deal where their material is going to be put into a much broader medium. And then previously they were thinking, well, I'll keep canon, over on this smaller medium. That will establish the canon, not this broader medium. Well, if you're just paying attention and you understand Garibay's canon law, you're going to realize as a creator, and we should certainly be realizing this as viewers, that the broadest medium that a fiction world is presented in establishes its actual canon. Thank you.